You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
NIMBY. N-I-M-B-Y. Why are we starting off with a podcast with a ridiculous acronym like that? Because it means, and if you don't know this, hey, you learned a little something today, right? Shocking for the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Not in my backyard is what that stands for. And that's kind of the bottom line that everybody goes to when we talk about homeless encampments. Well, we got too many homeless people. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough said affordable housing. Don't have enough addiction specialists. Don't have enough mental health care specialists. People end up living in homeless encampments. We got to put them somewhere. We're trying to work out areas where we're putting them. And it always comes down to not in my backyard. You know, I really think that we need to put them somewhere. We can't do homeless encampment sweeps. That's not good. But we need them away from the schools. We need them away from this. We need them away from that. They need to be here. They need to have these services. But the bottom line is, don't put them in my backyard. NIMBY. That's kind of what we're talking about today. Neighbors are upset with proposed homeless campsites in Austin, Texas. Don't mess with Texas. All right. So this is going on all over the United States, but more so in towns with leadership that has just kind of let the whole homeless encampment thing run away from them. They haven't had a control on it. They just let their fellow human being do whatever, crash out on the sidewalk for months on end. And then eventually when something really bad happens, we do a sweep. Here in Seattle, we've got a sweep going on right now today, Thursday, July 22nd, of a homeless encampment on Seattle public school grounds adjacent to Broadview K through 8 elementary, kindergarten through 8th grade. They've had a homeless encampment just growing. It's finally gotten to the point where that's getting swept out today. So those kids, those elementary kids and their parents can feel a little better about going to school? Yeah, I think so. We've also had an issue of a homeless encampment here close to Interstate 90 going into downtown Seattle. Rocks being thrown from there on the regular, averaging about a couple of rocks a day, not necessarily just from the homeless encampments, but it kind of seems like that's the case. Being thrown onto oncoming traffic on the freeway, doing 70 plus miles an hour, shattering windshields, craziness, just all kinds of stuff being thrown onto the freeway, including full-size propane tanks. If you don't think that's a public safety hazard, well, try having one bounce off of your windshield when you're driving down the freeway. See what you think after that. But the city of Austin proposes 2 spots for short-term homeless encampments. That's what we're going to talk about. Before we dive on in, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, a real estate brokerage, Summit Properties Northwest, and one of Seattle's oldest residential real estate appraisal firms, Reynolds & Klein Appraisal. Where's the Klein? He lives in Mazama, Washington, way east. He's been long since out of the picture, but this is what we're doing. Okay, enough of the chit-chat. Read the news. Okay, here we go. The city of Austin has announced 2... I got to move my chair up. Sit on a chair and your chair just kind of drops. City of Austin has announced 2 locations for proposed city-run homeless camps. The first preliminary site is a 3-acre lot at 3511 Manor Road, which is just east of Airport Road. The second is a larger lot in southwest Austin at 4011 Convict Hill Road. Do you think there might have been a prison there or a penitentiary at some point in time? Probably, that's directly off the MoPac. The locations are far from final. This is just the discussions. There will be a city council work session to discuss the 2 sites next Tuesday, July 27th. Then public feedback will be welcomed in August through community meetings and surveys via SpeakUp Austin website or an app. Each location was selected for temporary 2-year use and was chosen for its proximity to public transportation, access to basic retail services, and the likelihood wildfire risk can be mitigated. All right, so being the investigative news reader guy that I am, I also watched the video, and here's the criteria that the city of Austin has for requirements for these homeless encampments. Number 1, and this is not in any kind of order. I'm just throwing stuff out here. Number one, it can't have a flood or wildfire hazard. That makes sense. You don't want a flood coming through. You don't want wildfires happening either. 2 acres minimum for 50 residents, 4 acres minimum for 100 residents. Does that seem reasonable, or is that pretty dense? I don't really know. That's just what it is. Lighting, it's got to have some street lighting. It can't be in any public park. No parks, because that is, I think, a statewide mandate. I think they've re-upped that. It's got to have water and electricity or the ability to bring it in, meaning it's got to be pretty close. Public transportation has to be nearby, and safety lighting. So where does that leave these sites? Basically pretty close to the downtown core, because those are the areas where you've got the utilities that we're talking about, and also access to public transportation, lighting, all that good stuff. So they're closer in areas, and closer in areas, you've either got businesses or you've got schools or you've got neighborhoods. Not in my backyard, right? So the site on Manor Road also benefits from having effective traffic control, can accommodate larger vehicles, has existing utility infrastructure, fencing, and covered parking. The site on Convict Hill Road has a bus line within 15 minutes walking distance, enough space for camping and communal washrooms, and an existing building which can be repurposed for access to utilities. Neighbors, however, were far from pleased at the announcement. Everybody always is a huge fan of being compassionate to their fellow human being until the encampment goes in their backyard, right? This and this reason, I don't think this is the right location. I feel really bad, but this isn't the right location. It needs to go anywhere else but my backyard. Debbie Hamilton, whose grandparents settled on the property adjacent to the site on Convict Hill Road. I almost feel bad saying Convict Hill Road. You are a convict. You live on this road. There's a hill, Convict Hill Road. Just sounds kind of, it sounds like we shouldn't be naming roads Convict Hill Road, right? At the turn of the century, and said a new encampment might bring danger to the area. Okay, Debbie Hamilton indicating new encampment might bring danger to the area. She is concerned it might bring loitering and crime, thereby impacting the nearby neighborhoods, which house families, daycares, and Covington Middle School. So I would agree that it might bring danger. I'm not saying it's going to bring danger, but from what we've experienced here in Seattle, and let's go through just a short list of what we go through. You've got theft, property crime. You've got drug addiction, drug selling goes with that. You've got assault. You've got sexual assault. Oftentimes rapes occur. You've got ODs happen on the regular because you've got the whole drug addiction thing. You've got mental health care incidences where people just literally go crazy and do crazy stuff. You've got prostitution at times to support said drug addiction and or whatever it is that you've got going on. There's a whole litany. Here in Seattle, we've got rock throwing onto the freeway from one of our homeless encampments that is currently being swept. In the Broadview K-8 school, where we've got a homeless encampment on Seattle school property, they've had things like somebody broke into the school, the elementary school, was trying to steal a backpack. Another person broke in, didn't really get anything. They've watched a person OD, a naked body being hauled out that was ODing. They've watched sex acts happening in the homeless encampment. There was 911 called because they thought a homeless person was walking around with a gun. It was just a BB gun, but don't worry. Those are some of the kinds of things that happen on the regular. Not all homeless encampments are like that, but that's just a brief list of things that I'm not saying happen in every homeless encampment, but if you read enough homeless stories, those are things that come up on the regular. Those are just things that happen fairly regularly. And what usually happens is that if they're in a city park or something like that, you'll have enough 911 calls. And then when things get really bad, that's when the city comes in and addresses it because it's a public safety issue. The homeless encampment where we've got the rocks, bicycles sometimes get thrown onto the freeway. Scooters, another good one. Full-size propane tanks get thrown onto the freeway. I mean, it's a safety hazard. It's a safety issue. And so you can't have that happening. And so those homeless encampments they're being swept because you've got stuff going on that shouldn't be happening in those environments. So the Hamilton gal who doesn't want it in her backyard says, my heart goes out to them and I don't know the right direction to go, but I don't think this is it. Meaning, not in my backyard. Hamilton said, I just don't feel this is the right way to do it to impact me and all the neighbors. Unfortunately, with the criteria that Austin has going on, it's going to be by somebody, whether it's a business, a daycare, a school, or a residential neighborhood, or maybe an acreage development, maybe a home on small acreage. That's kind of the way this goes. If you need this criteria, having lighting, adequate public transport access, all that good stuff, the only places you find those are in denser areas. That's unless you are building an encampment far away with busing, with shuttle, buttle, that is a hybrid of bus and shuttle. If you didn't know, buttle, it's a new word. Look it up. It's not in there. On the other side of town, Green Sprouts Preschool is only a few hundred feet away from the proposed site on Manor Road. Director and owner Liz Jelinas sympathized with Austin's homeless, but is concerned the encampment will harm her business and endanger the school. City staff have determined potential encampments cannot be within 300 feet of a school, a distance Jelinas says should be reconsidered. Here in Seattle, the distancing from a retail store or somebody's front door in downtown is 11 feet. 10 feet is the maximum. If you're 11, the closest proximity you can get and have a tent. So like literally 10 feet away from a front door of a business in downtown, 11 feet, you're good. 10 feet or less, not good, not welcome, not per code. But 300 feet of a school, I'm a no-go on that either. That's just too damn close. You got kids walking to school. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a safety concern. And public safety is of major concern. So 300 feet of a school, that to me, little close. I think you need to be more than a mile from a school to find a safe location, Jelena said. We are taking care of young children all day and making sure they are safe. Having a homeless encampment nearby makes me nervous. Not in my backyard. And I say that not joking. It's just kind of the way everybody thinks and works. The site is also across the street from the Mueller neighborhood and hike and bike trail, popular for families with young children. Both women say they plan to speak up when the public engagement process begins in August. Helping the homeless is important to me, Jelena said, but my ultimate goal and priority is to ensure the safety of these families. Agreed. I couldn't agree more. I have been talking about the homeless encampment on school district grounds here in Seattle for a long time. And our mayor actually said, yeah, they need to figure that out themselves because it's on their property. They're $1 billion organization. They need to fix this. They need to work this out. Well, part of that was it's on school district grounds, so it's their responsibility. And then the school district here in Seattle basically said, homeless encampment sweeps are inhumane. We're never doing them. Well, we are doing one on that homeless encampment today, Thursday, July 22nd, because priority is to ensure the safety to these families and these kids. Those kids are seeing stuff that they shouldn't be seeing. That's the bottom line. I'm a hard no-go. Homeless encampments, proximity to schools. Those two just do not mix. All right. Hard line there drawn. And then it goes to, all right, so where do you locate these homeless encampments? And that is the really tough trick. I think, what was it? Caitlyn Jenner, she indicated, presidential candidate from California, she indicated to move them to open fields so it doesn't impact Venice Beach anymore. And she took a little bit of heat for that because it made her, and then she also referenced her private jet, I believe, in that conversation. And it just went down one of these roads where you're like, okay, maybe we should stop talking about where the homeless encampment should go. But that's been a huge issue with Venice Beach in California, is you've got homeless encampments basically lining the boulevard. And now that California is fully reopened and they're trying to get the tourist season going, tricky. Same thing with Portland. They took out a massive ad in the New York Times and basically said, hey, we're quirky in Portland. Come visit our downtown. Until they just had a bunch of shootings last weekend. And it's just not looking all that promising for downtown Portland. And I've had a number of listeners and viewers of the podcast say, yeah, downtown is still pretty much ghost land. In downtown Seattle, starting to come back. They've been doing a whole welcome back to downtown Seattle. They're working on some cleanup. They're working on talking about it being better. It's not quite there yet. But you've got this resurgence of people coming back. You've got Amazon bringing back workers. You've got all of these companies that are like, okay, it's time to go back in. We're okay with the downtown location now. And if you're going to run a business, a big business, you want to be in downtown because you've got all the infrastructure there. That's where your employees want to be. They don't necessarily want to make the commute. But if you're going to work in an area with vibrancy and with a lot of ability to pull people in and have big office space, that's just where you want to run a business from. This whole work from home from forever, that has come and gone. And we are now looking at, all right, got to go back to downtown. It's where we're located. It's where we have office space. I'm not saying that stuff isn't changing. It's changing as we speak. You're going to have hybrid desks and you're going to have people working 2-3 days a week from the office, working remotely otherwise. But the whole concept of working remotely forever, that's not happening. So now you've got homeless encampments in downtown. They're clashing. They're coming into conflict with everybody. And tourism. Tourism's another big thing. Seattle is working on tourism as well. We just had our first cruise ship leave the port of Seattle. First one. And geez, how long is that? A year and a half since last March, when things basically, remember all those cruise ships that had coronavirus outbreaks and we didn't really know what was going on at the time. And those cruise ships are like, hey, we got some people with Rona on board. Can we dock at your port? No? Okay. Johnny, take us up to the next country. The next continent, whatever you got to do. And they were literally like floating around waiting for somebody to let them in. Horrible. Imagine being stuck on a cruise ship with a bunch of infected Rona people and you don't really know what the deal is. Probably looking at your phone, getting all kinds of crazy texts from your friends and family. Still on the boat. Yep, haven't got it yet, but damn, this is not good. You got us under lockdown. I mean, you can't enjoy any of the amenities that a cruise ship would offer at that point because you are stuck in your room. So you've got all this stuff going on and we're trying to figure out, where do you put the homeless encampments? So this article goes on to say, at the bottom line, I want to know what this will cost us and will it be worth it? Harper Madison said. That's another consideration. What is this going to cost? And sometimes you see these estimates of $60,000 a year for a tent. And you think to yourself, all right, how does that work? And the way it works is the cities have to pay for wraparound services. You got to pay for mental health care. You got to pay for all this addiction specialists, all of this other stuff, basically stuff that tax-paying citizens are paying for because we no longer nobody goes to prison anymore. Nobody's in jail anymore long-term. And we don't have anybody in psychiatric facilities. We just dumped them all out. We emptied them all out because we determined that those are inhumane. So now we've got them living on the streets, and now we have to provide services. And so we're trying to figure this all out. And what will this cost us? And will it be worth 60 grand per tent? Seems excessive. But then when you figure out all the other services that have to be provided to get people either up and running back into their own housing or get them into temporary permanent housing, or sometimes it's just, this is where they're going to live because they don't have the ability mentally to probably transition themselves into their own housing with their own job. A lot of these folks, this is their life. This is the lifestyle they're going to be leading one way or the other. I had somebody send me a message on Facebook and they're like, hey, I'm one of the, and I did a segment on Social Security and the fact that Social Security is probably going to get a cost of living adjustment of, was it 5.1%, 6.1%? It's a lot. It's a big jump because so many of the things in the index for Social Security are increasing in price. And so I had somebody say, hey, I'm on the earlier end of the demographic you're talking about. I'm 62 and I'm taking Social Security because I paid into it and I want to get it. I don't get a lot, but what drives me crazy is that a family member of mine who does have an alcohol problem, he hasn't ever had a job and he hasn't paid into the system. And he's getting about as much money as I am. And I worked my whole life. I had a working career and I did that. And that drives me crazy. And that to me, there's no incentive for people to pay into the system and be good contributing people. We just do it because we think we should. And because vast majority of us feel like, yeah, I'm not going to live that lifestyle. But if you choose to, man, you can, you're going to pay a price living in a tent in the street. That's not an easy go. I was in Denny Park in downtown Seattle, which had like 60 tents in it, very small little homeless encampment, but it had a lot of issues, public safety issues, and 911 was called so many times. They eventually cleared it out. So I did a walk through that, and I did a walk through one of the most horrific rainstorms I've ever experienced in Seattle, to the point where the manhole covers were bubbling up because water was shooting out of them. We don't usually get rain that hard here in Seattle. Rains a lot, but just not that hard. So to live in a tent through one of those rainstorms, I know that, if you could live a free lifestyle, all right, so your tent gets wet, big deal. But it's not just that. It's living through the cold snap, or how about the heat deal we just had here in Seattle, where it's like 114 degrees. I could barely walk outside my office without just going, wow, I got to go back inside. People living in a tent don't have that option. So it comes with a price, but if you want to take that price and if you want to have all these services for you, they are out there. It's just that taxpayers, we pay for it. And I think a lot of tax-paying citizens are like, wait a minute. What's the deal here? I'm only getting this much, and somebody else who's just been irresponsible their whole life or whatever, they get this much, which is almost what I get. Doesn't seem fair, does it? No, unfortunately, here's the deal. Life isn't fair. That sucks. A lot of the questions have been about, what does fencing look like? Will there be on-site security? What social services will be provided? So those are some of the high-level questions that we certainly need to know the answer to before anything moves forward, she said. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the whole homeless encampment. We had a mayor, Greg Nickel, I think it was, and the homeless encampment, there was like Nicholsville 1 and Nicholsville 2, literally had homeless encampments named after him, and they were in certain segments of the, is he the mayor? Yeah, I think he was the mayor. Or he was a city councilman, can't remember. Not relevant, but we had areas, encampments named after him. And I always thought, that is so crazy that we've got entire areas of homeless encampments. And now it's such a thing that we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do long term to get there? So that's why I wanted to read this podcast today. Here is Don't Mess with Texas. Here is Don't Mess with Texas Austin's kind of criteria. Here's where they're proposing. And I know numerous other cities across the United States, I read the news stories, they're proposing multiple areas for said homeless encampments as well. And as those, sites come up, we'll talk about them because I think there is a lot to where do you put them? How does it look? What's the criteria? Does this make sense? 300 feet from a school, is that okay? Not in my book. Not in my book. If it's anywhere near like walking distance from a school, not in my backyard though, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. And it kind of comes down to, okay, I'd like them over there. And you never really hear anybody say that. Why? Because it's an unpopular opinion to come right out and say, I really want to help my fellow human being, but not in my backyard. But that's so much of what's going on. And that's where that's the rub, right? Is you want to help out your fellow human being, but you also don't want all of the other stuff that comes with the whole homeless encampment, unless they're really well run, and so many of them are not. And we just haven't had great examples of how to handle this. I think State of California, I'm going to do a podcast on that next. They're proposing like $12 billion toward the homelessness issue. $12 billion. Granted, California is pretty big. City of California, the city of LA, how many homeless people do they have there? It's crazy off the charts, right? Okay, but that's it for Texas and Austin and what they're doing in Austin and what neighbors think. They're not too pumped about it, but we're just at the discussion stages. In a lot of cities, we're just at the discussion stages because homelessness is a huge issue right now. Homelessness, public safety, affordable housing, and a lot of that is intertwined. And I cover it right here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast because why wouldn't I? All right. Thanks so much for being here. That's it for me. I'm going to go record another one. Until then, we'll chat soon. But stay safe. We'll talk then. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.